I'm using a few cartoons from Chris Morgan, who has been our cartoonist for many years. These are oldies, but I've pulled out a few that I thought may be relevant. And this is one. It was always difficult to avoid talking about congregational size of these things. And I think this is one of these things that I know I avoid talking about most of the time, and you'll find it very hard to find me talking about how large the church is, how much the church has declined. I don't do it. Today I will give you the numbers though. This is part of what this briefing is about. This is our best assessment at the moment of where together we are at, the body of Christ in Australia all together. Before I give you our church numbers, I have to name very briefly, of course, there's been extraordinary change in the broader context. When you think about how religious Australians are, you can think about that in a range of ways. And if I pick just three measures, how people belong, how people believe, and how people behave, those three lines represent those three things. So if you look at belief in God, that's the green line, you can see that since 1990 to 2011, the period that we're looking at, there's been a decline in the proportion of Australians who say, I believe in God or some kind of higher power. If you look at belonging, you see that, which is about identifying in the national census, there's been a decline. And also behaving, if you like, religious public practice, going to church, going to mass, then that has also declined over that period. The context has changed no matter how you measure it. That's where we're working. So the Australian census, in terms of one source of information for us, is religious affiliation. This is a picture of the last 100 years. I've given you as full a version as we can here. When asked, what is your religion? In Australia, there's been a decline in the proportion of people who tick any of the Christian boxes. We're now sitting at 61%. You can see that the red river flowing through there is the other religions group. So that has actually, that you can see that that's increased over time. But you have to be careful with statistics, don't you, and what people can do with them. And so when you see on the front page of the paper, they say Hinduism doubled in percentage terms or whatever, you go, well, okay, that's reflecting the Indian migration patterns, recent Indian migration patterns particularly, but we're only talking 7% overall. So when you go, Christianity is gone and Hinduism is the new ruling identity of religious people, you go, well, no. So that's the picture. What I think is much more significant is that in 1971, our government said for the first time, on the religion question, we need a no religion option. So if you need a marker of post-Christendom in Australia, if you want to put a measure on it, pick 1971 as the date. That's when the government said you're allowed to identify as having no religion. Now we have to be careful with this. It's not saying they don't believe in God. This is not saying even they may even attend religious services, etc. This is, I identify as having this religion as part of my identity. I belong to this tribe. It's a belonging statement. But you have to be very careful with that, because I see people misunderstanding and misusing this census data. It has grown to 22% of the Australian population at the moment.